Episode 19, Shoot for the Stars. Greetings and welcome, dear listeners. As is becoming habit for you all, you've wandered into my dark and sordid little corner of the world. My name is Jessi, and I'm here to share the strange and destructive powers that manipulate everyday people. So sit back, put your feet up, and listen to today's tale. So a quick warning to you all. This one seems... well, it sounds a bit faker than the rest that I've read. And not for the reasons you'd expect. It's not that the monsters seem unbelievable or the source is biased in some way. No, it's just what's claimed in this tale. Well, you'll all see for yourselves. I still believe in it. It has a feel to it, a honest feel. Today's saga comes to us from username Stargirl264. Okay, Jessi, this one that I'm sending you, I don't know if it breaks my NDA or not. Just in case my identifying information I've left out. Just call me Stargirl. It's what my parents did, all my friends, most of my teachers. It's been my nickname for so long that when someone calls me by my actual name, it takes me a moment to realize that they're talking to me. See, I've always felt the pull of space. For as long as I can remember, I've dreamed of dancing amongst the stars or flying through the cosmos on a spaceship, visiting far, far away worlds and galaxies. When I was 4 or 5, I discovered that astronauts were a thing, and just like that, my life was set. That's what I wanted. I watched every science fiction movie and show I could find, and when I was 7, I started watching documentaries. Chris Hadfield, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong. One year for Halloween, I went as the Moonlander. I love the idea of space, the vast unknown, the final frontier, the great expanse. So I spent every waking moment trying to learn as much as I could to get there. I studied the various effects of zero gravity. I studied robotics and micro-robotics. I kept myself in tip-top shape. I studied rocket science. Anything and everything that had to do with space, I devoured it. This was my life during the day. At night, that's when the call to space hit me hardest. For a long, long time, I thought I was just dreaming of what space could be, the things I'd read, the fiction books and shows melding into reality. I mean, that's what dreams are, right? Thoughts and memories and ideas all muddled together with no real border delineating between them, and that was my sleeping life for years. Well, more for my entire life, as long as I can remember. Now I know better. I know they're not dreams. But we'll get there. It was in high school when they found me. I'm not entirely sure how Sea Canada's space program is. Well, to say small would be a bit of an understatement. A satellite here, a Canadarm there. Nothing much. Places like the US, Russia, China even, they're known more for their space programs. Hell, in California, there's a company looking to launch rockets with the power of spinning rather than massive amounts of fuel. Via comparison, well, Canada doesn't really stack up that way. At least that's the public perception. There's a lot behind the scenes for most governments that people don't really know about. I'm not talking like secret societies and whatever, just departments that aren't really part of the public eye. They do research and make decisions that are just outside the consciousness of most people, but if you know where to look, it's easy to find. One of these departments is the Spatial Research Department. I signed an NDA, so I can't go into too many details, but they do space research. Some of the top spatial scientists and engineers do research there. You think that rockets just appear? The amount of people involved in just making a rocket, well, there's a lot to it. Most of the rockets you've heard of, they're the collective efforts of hundreds of people, and a lot of them come from the Spatial Research Department. Think of them like a stepping stone. They give you the prerequisites you need for any space-related career. Of course, astronauts are by far the smallest population of those involved in the space process, but it's a lot easier to make them the public face rather than the hundreds and thousands of other people who are involved in a myriad of ways. So they found me in high school. Not entirely sure how, but with phones and Facebooks and all the other monitoring that companies and countries do, I wasn't all that surprised. It was at a career day. I got called to the guidance counselor, and there they were. They didn't stand right. They stood at odd angles, like it's hard to describe. They weren't overtly wrong or anything. It's not like they were bent in half, but they leaned down just a little more than you would have expected. Their elbows were a little bit farther down the length of their arms would have suggested. Their heads were tilted in opposite directions just a bit too much. Again, not overt, not a lot too much, just enough to be off-putting. They introduced themselves as Agents WB and BW. Honestly, at the time, I thought they were pulling my leg. I hadn't even heard of where they were from, and I was already assuming this was a prank of some kind. They spoke together. Not like at the same time, that would have been creepy as all hell. No, they spoke normally, but when one would trail off, the other would pick up immediately, like they knew exactly what the other was going to say. There was no pause between them. One would say one word or a sentence, and the other would pick up the next right away. It was, again, off-putting. Everything about them was. But I got the information that they were representatives of a branch of the government, that they knew about my interest, and that they wanted me to come work for them straight out of high school. That gave me some pause. I'd always known that I'd be going to university, studying robotics and space, and get a job probably in the US, then work my way up to being an astronaut. If this new option didn't pan out, I wouldn't have a degree to fall back on. I told them as much, that I was thankful for their interest, but that I needed the fallback plan, and that just made them smile. They handed me a phone, and the person on the other end claimed to be a dean of University of Toronto. They congratulated me on getting a doctorate. Now, I knew this had to be a joke. I was 17, not enrolled in any university yet. U of T had definitely been my first choice, but there was no way whatever was going on was real. Then my phone vibrated, and I opened it. I had an email with a digital copy of my doctorate, Robotics and Micro-Robotics, signed by the dean. That gave me pause again. This was a little far for some prank, and I didn't know anyone well enough to really have them put this much effort in. So I asked the guidance counselor how to check if it was real. They called the school, used a contact they had, some head of admissions or something, and according to their records, I was indeed a graduate with top marks. The agents looked at me, then each other. They told me to take my time thinking about it, to give them a call when I'd decided. They handed me a card that just had a phone number, then they left. The guidance counselor let out a deep breath, told me it was the strangest encounter she'd ever had. I agreed. I went home and talked it over with my parents. Obviously, you know what happened. I wouldn't be writing this if I'd denied them. I gave them some terms, most notably a trial period where I could leave this shadowy secret organization with no repercussions. They'd laughed and took me on a tour. In the middle of a building, smack dab in the middle of Ottawa, the capital of the country, in broad daylight. It was the least secret thing I could imagine. We walked in through the front doors, saying hi to several people in the courtyard. The inside was, well, normal. Bright lights, lots of lab space, research stations, top-of-the-line computers, people in white lab coats. To be honest, it was pretty much the opposite of everything I'd expected. I'd been thinking it would be in the back of some alley, dingy lighting in a warehouse by the docks of some long-forgotten town with rusted metal tables, hunched-back workers everywhere. So the culture shock hit me a little hard, but not quite as hard as the things inside that I saw. Now this I cannot talk about without breaking the NDA. Just know that, as a robotics nerd, it was basically nirvana. I took the tour, met with many of the other scientists and workers. Most of them had been recruited in similar circumstances and had been here for their entire careers. They told me that the recognition of the scientific world would never really be theirs. They wouldn't publish papers, win Nobel Prizes, but instead they had unlimited funding, the green light on almost any project, and the thing that I thought had to be a lie. They claimed most of them had been to space. Not too far, just between Earth and the Moon, mostly on satellites, space stations a lot smaller than the ISS, but they'd gone. They'd been astronauts. To say I was ecstatic was an understatement, a massive one. My dream was there, in my hands. I enforced my trial period, but that flew by. Even with all my knowledge and newfound somehow legitimate degree, going to space still takes training, rigorous exercise and diets. It would be months before my first trip, but that was still decades sooner than what I'd been planning for. And that first trip, life-changing. You always hear about, oh, it was incredible to see just how small we are, or other platitudes, but the truth is that there's just no other way to describe it, really. That's what it's like. You're taken beyond the borders of everything and anything you've ever known in your life, and you can see the tiny mud ball that you used to call home and the vastness of everything else beyond it. It makes you feel tiny and gigantic at the same time. My role that trip was pretty small, just adjusting some robotics I'd helped design in my months leading up to it, but it was still a week in space. That's also when I learned that my dreams, they were not dreams. In space, with only one or two other people around at any time, there's a lot of psychological issues that can happen in an environment like that. In science fiction, they call it space madness, or words similar to that. It's basically the idea that in the vast emptiness of infinity, your mind can't comprehend what it can't contain, and you go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Obviously, it's more complex than that, but that is the gist. Anyways, we all go through regular psychological evaluations before and after each trip. And that's what I thought was happening. I wasn't sleeping, or at least I don't think I was. I was awake looking out at the stars, the planets, the vast curtains of black between them. The station I was on had huge observation windows, and it was like looking at a tableau. I stared for hours at a time. It's a view you can't really put into words. It's like looking at creation itself. Then creation itself began to whisper to me. It spoke promises of what was to come, of the worlds I would visit, of the creatures I could find, of what it would be like out there in the endless void. So much undiscovered, so much to see, to find, to have named after me. I just needed to open the door of the airlock. Just step out and my hand was on the handle to the airlock. The others were asleep, and while there's cameras with live feeds going, most of the time they're there for research. They're not usually watched alive, so no one communicated to us. I pulled my hand back and stared at it. Was I really just about to walk out into space? No suit, no protection, nothing, just a t-shirt and jeans, really? It scared me. Like that fear you get that rattles you so much that you retreat into yourself. You curl up into a ball and just rock, and that's what I did for the rest of the trip. I got back into the capsule, and we made it home safe. We all went through our psyche evals and passed. I don't know how I passed. I told them what had happened, and they seemed nonchalant about it. Apparently it happens very often, but your survival instincts always kick in before you can actually do it. Not to mention that the keypad requires 2 sets of fingerprints from those on the station to be able to open it. I breathed easier, but didn't go up on the next trip. I remember how casual my shipmates had been up there on Blue Nose 3. Yes, I know there's been 3 Blue Noses already. It's a point of contention with those that named the station. I began to hear whispers again, and the pull to go back to the station. Now, I know that doesn't seem like the sort of thing you normally have on your show. I did a little research into you when a colleague mentioned it. They like blaring indie podcasts and broadcasts and other words I've never bothered to listen to. But I told him about what had happened, and he recommended you. Look, I know psychological issues are not the supernatural, not the beyond the veil of reality stuff you talk about, but, well, it's not psychological. In my dreams, the voice is always the same, always a low whisper that sounds like a purr, like if a cat had a voice, and it promises me things. It tells me secrets about colleagues that I couldn't possibly know otherwise, and it promises space. All the things I've wanted from the time that I learned what space is, the planets, the stars, the creatures, the cosmos. So I went up again. A month-long voyage this time. I stayed away from the window for a while, but I found myself constantly waking up next to it. In space stations, you gotta strap yourself down when you sleep or you'll float around. Somehow, I'd been undoing those restraints in my sleep and floating over to the big window. The moment I looked out at it, I stared again. Hours, minutes, days, they all passed with my attention held fast there. And the whispers. No longer just in my dreams, now constant, promising everything I've ever wanted if I just took one step. If I just trusted them, they'd been guiding me my whole life. This was everything I'd ever wanted, and I could have it all. Just one step, one door, one step, then infinity. My blood pounded in my ears the whole time. I barely heard my colleagues, the whispers, anything. All of it was quiet compared to the sound of my beating heart and racing blood. I woke up with my hand on the handle nightly for weeks. When I finally came back down, I swore off travel into that forbidden place until a month ago. I went up again, just 2 weeks this time. The whispers, I couldn't ignore them. They demanded my attention, but it was small, subtle. They spoke with a casual authority, never ordering me. Everything was always my choice. I chose to sign up for the next mission. I chose the older model suit. I chose the bunk closest to the door. I chose not to strap myself in at night. Well, our night and day are less of a thing up there when the sun blares 24/7, but that's besides the point. And again, always awake with my hand on that handle, and my colleagues never mentioned it. They saw me, I know they did, but they never said anything, never tried to stop me. It was like they weren't even there sometimes. It's hard to explain, but you know when you sort of space out, and you know everything's there, but it feels like it isn't? It was like that, sort of. Space kept whispering. Then the final night, I found myself in the airlock. So the airlock is basically an extra chamber attached to the Blue Nose that gets pressurized and depressurized so you can go in and out like on a sub, but in space. The door can't open without at least 2 different fingerprints from those on the current mission. So how was I there, alone, behind that coded door? I panicked. I pounded the door over and over and over until one of my colleagues came to the window, and for a moment, they smiled. A cold smile, a shark-like smile. Small, but dangerous. His head was tilted just a little more than it should have been. Then I blinked, and I must have passed out because when I came to, I was in the pod crashing back to Earth. Not literally crashing, it was a normal descent, but the whispers were there, telling me just how close I'd been, that I was almost there, almost at the infinite kingdom that I'd always wanted. I passed my eval again, somehow, and one of the agents who'd recruited me congratulated me on all my progress. Told me they were looking forward to seeing more of my results, and they smiled, that same small, dangerous shark grin. That head tilt just a little too much. I didn't sign up for the next trip, I swear, but my name is on it. And again, that old model suit is in my luggage, and I know I'll be up there. I know the door will somehow open for me, just that one step. Everything I've ever wanted, everything I'll have. Just one step. This This was sent to me 5 days ago. I read it yesterday. I have no way to confirm any of what is in here is real, but listed under the graduates of U of T graduating class of 2023 is one 17-year-old Sophia Leduc. There are no other 17-year-olds listed in the previous decade, so I'm certain it's Miss Leduc who is above us right now. I hope the door stays closed, that she doesn't take that one step. I also think it's rather clear the agents are Weatherby and Betherby. The descriptions alone, plus the initials, I don't really believe in coincidence. Not anymore. So it would seem that they are two different beings after all. And she was right, this isn't the type of saga we would usually read, but the whispers. She said they tell her secrets of people around her, right? People knowing things they couldn't or shouldn't is hardly a new concept. Often the merchant character possesses knowledge far beyond what they should, and there's usually even an advisor of sorts who seems to have their fingers in every pie. I wonder if the voice she hears is Betherby and Weatherby, or if somehow they just happen to learn of Miss Leduc in her dreams of space and beyond. Secret government departments. Again, you'd think it'd be a new idea, but civilizations older than some of our oldest records go back have tales of secret cults and cabals of priests and servants that answer directly to the monarch in one way or another. Now, how much of this spatial research department was real, for lack of a better phrase? How much of it was made for Miss Leduc, a facade made by or made with Weatherby and Betherby, with her psychological fear being the goal, maybe? Or did this department truly exist already, and the two simply took advantage of it? And if her fear truly is the goal, to what end? Did this saga grip you, dear listeners, turn you into a believer? Or is this supernatural still just fairy tale and crazy folks on the internet? Thank you for listening, and until next time, let's cross that veil together.